decided we'll do some videos now on this, building this big T-Rex I'm printing. This is one piece I've just got off the printer, so I'll go through how I've joined the pieces and some of the technique I used to solder it together. So I've got my 3D printing pen here. So this I basically cut. You can see just flush cuts, and I sort of just cut it so I can do one whole vertebrae. Oh, this is actually a neck bone now, neck vertebrae, on the printer at one time. I think maybe like this on the printer. So it all fitted on my print area on the CR10 Max. So now it's just basically like a jigsaw, and we'll use the 3D printing pen, but like a MIG welder. So I'll get my base piece here. I'll get some filament loaded in. This is just a cheap 3D printing pen using offcuts of PLA Plus that I've got left over. So I'll get one of these loaded up, ready to go. Running at about 210 degrees Celsius on the pen. Seems to work about right for doing the joins. So basically just lay down thick material in the joins. I'll just get that started to run, and then we'll start getting these stitched together. Obviously with big surface area on the print area you can get a bit of warping at times, because mine's not an enclosed printer, but that's where the 3D printing pen comes in handy, because you can fill in the little gaps. That's up to speed. So I might tack this one first before we join it to that, just to make it a little bit easier to hold. So normally we'll try and get it as close to, you can sort of move them around a little bit once you get it done, but I'll just get a tack here first. This is quite hot filament, obviously coming out of 210, but you press it quickly, you can sometimes just get it smoothed out a little bit, just enough to get it pushed in the gap to get it started. Now we'll roll it over. Now, as you can see, there's a wee bit of a seam there, but it's not a problem with a 3D printing pen and a soldering iron. You can tidy all this stuff up. Sometimes blowing on it can help just cool that filament a little bit quicker, so you can move on to the next side. Pretty much there now, so we'll just put this over onto this one. I just want to make sure that this is all going to line up. So now this is the tricky bit. Sometimes I tape it if I don't have enough, obviously don't have enough hands sometimes to hold everything together. I'm just going to put a little tack on that one. Let that just cool a little bit, so that it holds it in place, so I can get another tack on the other side there. Well, it's because once you've got it tacked, you can get the worst of the bigger gaps out of it, and then makes it a lot easier than just to run around all the joins then with the 3D printing pen. Put a decent long one on here. Do that one for now. And it looks pretty good on the back. I'll try and angle these over once I start doing a bit more on them, so at least you see what I'm doing. So now I'm just going to work around all these joins here, just filling in with the 3D print pen. I try to do them as little pieces as possible so there's less joins, but also try to cut them in such a way that they will print without any need of supports, because on a project this size, obviously 3D supports a waste of filament. So I try to reuse everything. Like even if I have the odd failed print, I generally will keep the pieces in a box, and either I cut bits out to use them to help fill gaps where there's been some major warping issues, which can happen on bigger pieces like the skull. As you get near the end, if there's something hasn't quite been aligned, you end up with a few little gaps, but you can fix it excess material, and obviously a bit of soldering work, 3D printing pen, and any spare PLA. And the other thing I quite often do, say if I had a print on my printer that got to, say it was on the printing area, and it got to here, say, and it messed up, which I've had a few do, which it does happen from time to time, it's 3D printing. What I would do is just stop it, take it off the printer, and then before I take it off, I'd normally measure from the print deck or the print bed up to where the last good layer was, and then I would just go into my slicer and reopen the STL, drop it that amount of distance, and then print that last piece and just join it straight on, because it's not really too much different to what I've been joining anyway. So that way I don't really have, when you say failed prints, not really a thing, because I just try and reuse them as much as possible so that there is no wastage, because it's sort of something I can't really afford to have is wastage on a job this size. If you guys have any other questions or comments about the process, or want to see particular videos to do with parts of the process on this big job, just feel free to drop a comment in the comment box. It's just dropped off temperature. These little things are quite temperamental for they got an auto, like a cool down, or an auto like a snooze function or sleep. Sometimes it cuts in, or if there's a loose wire it'll start working before it's supposed to. So I'll just quickly apply some down here. Usually once I get going with this, it's just go as quick as possible, just get through it, and then I can start the soldering work. I'm not sure how these videos are going to go, because it is quite a tedious, sort of boring job, so there's not exactly a lot to see. This is probably where a live way of streaming live would be better, where you could ask questions while I was doing it, but I struggle to get coverage out of the shed here onto good Wi-Fi coverage to stream. I'll just go around this side. And you can see Penny behind me there, on a slightly lower mount at the moment, because I've just got it set up for a kids' day at the end of this month. And I had it originally on quite a high one, but because it's going to be on an outdoors stand display with a gazebo over it, it needed to be down underneath the height of the top of the gazebo, so that the kids can still see it. So it's only a temporary stand. It will be much higher on the final display. This one here on this side to do. There's a little bit of warp on this one where it's crept out a little bit, but it's nothing major, nothing that a soldering iron can't fix. And I got a lot of this, there's a little bit of stringing going on here, nothing major, that'll sand off once I've done the epoxy. That would be all easy enough to tidy up. Just got to get into this little gap here and put a bit on the inside here. More on this side to do. Then we can. Oh, dropped off temperature again. And this is a really good way to use up your excess pieces of filament left over off rolls or offcuts that when you pull back out of the printer, because you end up with only wasting probably the length of this at the end of it. And even then, sometimes you can push the next one in and force that right through, so you don't end up with any wastage at all, which is really good. I've got a little bit here I missed. Let's get in there and do that one. I've got this side to do as well. Obviously these pieces will be a little bit fragile with these thinner pieces of foam hanging off them. These were actually, I did sculpt these to be separate, but I had done two, they're over there actually, I can grab them so you can see them. These are two of the vertebrae that go immediately behind the head, and I did sculpt them separate, but then it's a bit of a tricky thing to try and reattach them again. So what I did with that model, just put that away, is in 3D Windows 3D Builder, I just literally moved those pieces up, across, just a touch so that they were just intersecting the mesh on each side, and then hit the merge button, and that's just made them, it's all part of it then. It seems to be having to join because that'll obviously be a weak point, and being two separate pieces, and these being quite thin. So now I've just got to figure out which one of these goes to which side. Need to look at this from the side to see. So I didn't actually take note when I took it off the printer as to which one went where, so yeah, that one's definitely not that one. Probably not going to matter too much at the end of the day, but I normally, yeah, that's definitely this one. So we'll tack that one there now. Let's see how that goes there. Let's get that held there. Oh, we're off temperature again. Okay, I'll just sit this over here so I can, a little bit of work sometimes on these sort of oddly shaped bits. Let's put it to get back up. 50 degrees, it drops off real quick. You'll see there's a bit of layering on these ones, just because it's on quite a fast print setting at the moment, but not a problem once you put a bit of resin on them and then get a light sand, kind of get rid of some of it. Some of it's not too bad. I quite like leaving a little bit of it there because it gives it that little bit of a fossilised look to it. Should just about have enough to do these two little joints. That's what's left in here. We're up to 200 degrees now, so it's not very far away. Find the right one again. Is it this one? Yeah, this is the one. I think. Yeah. There we go. So we'll get this tacked on. Obviously, once I put a coat of resin over this, I'll probably fairly liberally on these, just to give these slightly more fragile pieces a little bit of buffer. Just come around the back here. I'll do these ones first with the soldering iron, just so you can, I'll show you my technique for using my modified soldering iron with the multi-adjustable, well, just with tips that I can take and replace. Okay, this one goes on here. Just get it held there so I can. It's like you're not trying to do a perfect job with the 3D printing pen, it's just applying material that you can then use with the soldering iron. Some people ask why I haven't used glue, but glue's messy, it stinks and it's got fumes. It may make the joins a little bit stronger if you did apply some to it, but on the other hand, the way I use the filament around here and then do the epoxy layer of the outside relatively thick, it doesn't end up being too much of a problem from what past experiences, and I've had some done for a few years that same way and I haven't had any issues with them. Actually, it's more likely to break outside of the actual joins themselves. Alright, I'll just check that it's done on the, I know we've got a bit on this one, I've got it finished here. We might need to get a bit more filament for this one. We'll just about use this a little bit up. Won't be too long and we'll get through this. We'll move on to the soldering iron. Get me close. Just building it up. There's a slightly bigger gap at the back here, but that's alright. Not a problem when you have a 3D printing pen. It just gives you a little bit more to play with. Real close, we might not need any more. We'll make it just perfect way to use up the last year filament now. Just the last little bit up. A little bit there to do. We're done. Right, I'll spit that a little bit out. That can go over there. And I've got my preheated soldering iron here all ready to go. So I don't know if you can really see it, I'll walk it over so you can see, but it's just got a flattish tip on it and bent over, which makes it easy for smoothing out these joints. It's quite warm. It's a 30 watt. Yeah, it's a 30 watt soldering iron, so I found it seems to be about the right, short of having an actual temperature controlled one. This one, 30 watts, seems to be about right for the temperature melting the PLA. The big PLA plus or Eastern PLA plus, it's not doesn't have a hugely high melting temperature, slightly higher than standard PLA, but not much. Again, it's not perfect doing this, but once you get the resin, and you just give it a bit of a sand around the joints, you can almost get rid of them completely. Depending how thick a resin you apply. I try not to apply it too thick unless it's a sort of structural area. Some of this stuff will just come off with the sander, or you can use the soldering iron to sort of smear out sort of defects or pieces where the prints have stopped and started different layers, just settings I haven't really played around with too much yet. As you can see, it's quite a boring drawn out process, just working through all the joints. These ones up here should come up pretty good once I've done this, just work my way around. It helps to have good light and good ventilation when you're doing this. There's not really too much fumes off it, it's more just a bit of steam. I think some of this filament may have been, obviously these are just offcuts, so they probably got a little bit of moisture in them, which is what the steam is from, because it's quite porous, the PLA, which is why it doesn't print very well when you put a roll that's got moisture in it. But with the heat of the soldering on here, it kind of doesn't really matter too much. You just apply the material with the printing pen, and then the heat here will kind of just sort of dries it out as you go, and then it's going to have epoxy, so not too much of an issue. So we'll just keep working around here. I'll probably cut some painting at some point of the vertebrae, but I've got another whole lot ready to go that I've previously done the epoxy on before I started this video, so I'll move into those shortly for this video. This one will probably be enough info for the boringly watching me work on the doing the soldering here. I don't want to get distracted too much because I don't want to burn myself, because this can be pretty warm. Got a few little scars and things from previous pieces where I've got a little bit too close to the soldering iron while I'm working on it. But it's almost a therapeutic process, just working through. It's tedious, but it's sort of a big part of having to do this with this big 3D print of Penny the T-Rex, sculpted in Shape Labs VR. So yeah, we'll move on to the painting on the next pieces after this one. Right, so here we are at painting. I've been through and I've done the base coat on the time lapse, as you would have seen. I've also been around and sanded again, given it another coat, and then also applied a bit of darker area and where I think there might be some shadowing, just to help accentuate and make them pop. Now to apply the top coat, it's actually super simple with the way I've sculpted them in virtual reality. There's obviously a lot of texture and detailing on the surface using the alpha brushes that you can use in Shape Labs VR, because it's just so handy. You can basically make up your own alphas in any paint shop program, which an alpha is basically a transparent material, and you can apply like for example, you just did some black stripes on a transparent image PNG and export that as an alpha, and then import that into Shape Labs, and then you can then apply that to a brush, and it will then either add or take away the material on the surface in whatever shape you've made your alpha brush. So you can either make, spots or dots to make like holes like I've done here for pitting, or you could do like cracks. You can do all sorts. That's where it's just one of the best apps actually available for virtual reality sculpting online. So and for my method for doing the dry brush technique, it's fairly simple. It's pretty straightforward. I just have a spray can. I normally wear a mask when I'm doing this, but I only just do little bits at a time. So I just squirt a little bit on a piece of cardboard, and then I just start dry brushing it on just over the higher points. And while it might not look much at the moment, it does sort of slowly just adds, because of the way that it's been 3D printed, and then you take it outside and you put it in the light, it really does make it pop. But there's probably other ways you could paint it to make it look different, but for this particular one I'm doing, this is probably the fastest because I've got so much to do. Definitely works in my favour so that I can keep concentrating on some of the other pieces. So this is just a black satin black that I'm using to do some of this detailing here. And depending on which way you do your brush strokes, you can also add obviously detailing in that way as well. And then I'll obviously go over it, put them in the light outside. It's a bit dark in the shed, but it's just super bright outside today, so I'm just don't want to leave all the pieces sitting out in the sun too long. And then I'll add more detail later on as I just go around and check them in different lights and see some areas I might end up just doing a light darker spray with the spray just to make them pop a little bit more. But with the detail on the surface, you can see just applying a slightly darker colour to it suddenly gives it a lot more texture. And some of these pieces, a lot of it's going to actually be partially hidden by the rest of the actual skeleton of it. So it's some of it's almost unnecessary detail. So having a more of a base coat across some of it is you don't have to spend as long on it as such. Whereas something like that, where it's a lot more visible, obviously took a little bit longer to paint. It's sort of like the highlight of the main part of the whole thing, to be fair. Just picking up a bit of the copper that's still on cardboard here that I use. This should be a little bit better. And that's basically it. It just the same as the soldering. It's just a tedious process that time consuming and just needs doing just to add all the details. Like, this is a pretty fast way of doing it. I'm kind of rushing here a little bit just to get through this video, but this piece is the first piece immediately. I'm trying to think which way it goes, but it's immediately in front of the hips where I've got a section already mounted between the hip bones. So this one will be the next one in line. So this is pretty much going to be 100% hidden out of sight, this particular piece, because of the fact that it's the hips come over each side, and that the wider pieces of them kind of completely hide this, but it's still a necessary part of the whole structure. And I've got my hole through there where we're going to run a metal pipe later on that will then hold these upright along the spine. So something like this, where I want a bit more shadow, I might just sort of just apply a bit like that through there. Do the same on the other side. Normally I do this outside. I prefer to do this on a sort of a cloudyish day where I think it's a bit better lighting, because it's quite hard in the shed, and at the moment with it direct sunlight outside, it's like so bright you have to have your sunglasses on, and then it's kind of hard to see the shadow at the same time too, because it's so sharp and contrasting. So the shed's not the best place to do this. I prefer to do it outside, but we'll get it stuck in and we'll do it in the shed today, and we'll see how it goes. Finished there. Those are all done. Maybe a bit of tidy up later when I've got some time to get them outside. But that's all of the pieces done. Until the next batch is ready to go. I've got to work on the framework for these now. But like any big project, when you get to the end of the big bit of a stint of painting or whatever. Thanks Steve Wallace for this one, or Camping with Steve. Time for a step 2. Got my step 2, and we'll just have a quick walk around the workshop so you can see all the different pieces. I'll just grab the phone here, back the other way. So over here we've got these pieces I've just done. And these pieces here, and there's Penny's skull just there. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it very well. And then if we come around this other end of the workshop, got all the leg bones there in a big pile, ready to start hooking up, ready to go. So that's that for this video. We'll catch you on another one.